Mark chapter 6, verse 45 to 52. Then Jesus made his disciples get into the boat, then being after the feeding with the loaves and the fish. Then Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and precede him to the other side toward Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. Note the differences, by the way. And when he had taken leave of them, he went off to the mountain to pray. It's not exactly how it is in John, is it? It's a little different. I want you to notice that. When it was evening, the boat was far out on the sea, and he was alone on shore. Then he saw that they were tossed about while rowing, for the wind was against them. About the fourth watch of the night, he came walking toward them, walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out. Seen him and were terrified. But at once he spoke with them. Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. He got into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely astounded. They had not understood the incident of the loaves. On the contrary, their hearts were hardened. Interesting, huh? It's different. It's very different. Hope you're not reading this like a fundamentalist. The scenario covers evening, dark, and the next day in the Johannine version. So it takes place over a whole night. Jesus thus comes to his disciples on a stormy night, and that's agreed with the Markan version. Everyone is familiar with the gospel story describing Jesus walking on the Sea of Galilee. Familiar, maybe spuriously familiar. He's heading out toward the disciples who are in a boat. Let's look at the Matthean version of this story. Matthew chapter 14, 22 to 33. Then Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. It is a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them. Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. Peter Peter said to him in reply, Kyrie, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Kyrie, save me. Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him, and said to him, O you of little loyalty, why did you doubt? After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. You are the true Israel. The English phrase inspired by this event, he thinks he can walk on water. You all have heard that expression before. Intends to describe someone who thinks that he or she can do the impossible with ease. But like many popular interpretations of the Bible, this one too misses the mark by a long shot. It's not impossible to walk on water. You know, human beings actually do walk on water every time it rains or when there's a spill. But walking on the sea? To walk on the sea is an entirely different matter. The word yam in Hebrew, or the Greek thalassa, gets translated into English as sea. And it's a key word in the gospel story and in the entire biblical tradition. A clear understanding of that word yam, or thalassa, and reality, the reality behind that word that's culturally interpreted, suggests that we need a new interpretation of this event in the life of Jesus. One not bogged down with scientific Western understandings of ocean, sea, weather patterns, and whatnot. The sea. Many ancient cultures, including that of ancient Syro-Palestine, ancient Israel, personified much, if not all, of reality. If something happened, they never asked what happened. They always asked, who done it? All causes were personified. In other words, there is no word in Hebrew for it rained. It's God sends the rain, or God delivered the rain. There's always, when something happens, the question is, who did it? Every cause was personified. Everything in existence was personified. And the sea is no exception. In the Mesopotamian traditions, Tiamat is the primordial watery source of life, a goddess associated with the saltwater sea. Contemporary scholars now discount that Tiamat is the source for the biblical Tehom, which gets translated as abyss, yet both words may share some root meaning in the culture. They probably do, in fact. It's important to note that in all the accounts we find of this story, in the synoptic versions and in John, they saw Jesus walking on the sea, not water, not H2O, not the way our cultural consensus reality interprets the mystery we call water, we call sea, but the way their consensus reality interprets and communicates thalassa and yam. In the world of the Bible, the sea is an essentially different entity from our scientific water. And you have to understand that. If you don't understand that, and you're reading this story, You are ethnocentrically distorting it to your own American Western meaning. And you're missing the point. To walk on the sea is to trample on a being, on an other than human person that can engulf people with its waves, swallow them in its deep, and support all sorts of living beings. Someone tell me, what's on the feet of first century Israelites as they walk?
Sandals.
Huh?
Sandals.
What else is on their feet?
Feces.
Well, feces, animal feces. It's everywhere. There's no sewage system. When you get to somebody's house, they stink. Your feet stink, and you need to have a slave wash your feet. So to walk on the sea is to walk on a great, powerful, other than human person, more powerful than any human being. For a human being to be able to do that, wow, they got some pull with alternate reality, don't they? Somehow they have the authority to walk on a god, a lesser, other than human being, a person. Not just a being, because a rock is a being, right? A tree is a being, but a person. When you look at the sea, do you think of it as a who or a what? Okay, in the Bible, it's always a who. You got to get that or you misunderstand the story. Given the structure of boats that we have found from the period, people who traveled over or worked on the sea literally were putting their lives in the hands of the other than human person, the spirit or deity, that revealed its wild mood changes in the varying movements of the sea, from stormy to rough to calm and the like. The Greco-Romans identified the living sea with the important deity called Poseidon or Neptune. Semites called this deity Tiamat or Tehom, a goddess noted for violent mood swings and power. Jesus' ability to walk on the sea in all these Jesus group traditions is evidence of his place in the hierarchy of cosmic powers. Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. V'haaretz ayata tohu v'bohu. Listen to that word, tohu. V'hoshek al panei tehom. Tehom, tohu tehom. V'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim. The earth was tohu v'bohu, without form or shape. Tohu sounds like Tiamat, right? And darkness was over the panei, the face of Tehom. Tehom, the abyss, sounds like Tohu, sounds like Tiamat. Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great abyss, Tehom, sounds like Tiamat, burst forth, and the floodgates of the sky vault were opened. This isn't science, folks. Genesis chapter 8, verse 2. The fountains of Tehom and the floodgates of the sky vault were closed, and the downpour from the sky vault was held back. So we got Poseidon, we have Neptune, we have Tiamat, we have Genesis. Contemporary scholars correctly recognize that the basic ideas of all these myths, myth is that which will always be true and never happen. All these myths derive from a common and shared Mediterranean cultural perspective. The distinctive significance of the biblical tradition is that unlike these other myths, in the biblical myths of Genesis chapter 1 through 11, God controls this potentially chaotic sea and does not gain his mastery over it by doing battle with it. Modern Bible readers have to keep these personifications in mind in order to properly appreciate biblical narratives on their own cultural terms. If you're reading the story, any story in the Bible about the sea, and you're thinking about it in terms of ocean science, or the natural sciences, or meteorology, or weather patterns, you got it wrong. You're distorting the text in favor of your own ethnocentric reading. You have to read it as a personified entity. You have to read it as an other than human person. Hey, thanks for watching. Just continue the playlist for the next part of the study. If you have further questions, this is good. They will get addressed, so keep watching. If you found value, please subscribe, like, and share. As always, questions, comments, and criticisms are most welcome. God bless you.